Welcome again, guys, to our quality control sessions. We are now talking about topic number two, which is key risk indicators, KRIs. As you know, we finalize our topic number one, which is key performance indicators, KPIs. Let us start with our next topic, KRIs. We're going to start with the definition of the key risk indicators, KRIs. KRI is an indicator which is used by organization to help define its risk profile and monitor changes in that profile. KRIs are used to answer the question, how is our risk profile changing and is it within our desired tolerance levels? This explains to us that we have a desired target or a desired tolerance levels that we has to respect it, and we are not allowed to exceed these tolerance levels. Like KPIs, KRIs can be financial and non-financial nature and leading or lagging, as we give the definition for these types of the indicator set: leading, lagging, financial, and non-financial. They can be quantitative or qualitative in nature, where KPIs tell us if we are achieving our targets. KRIs help us to understand the changes in our risk profile and the impact and likelihood of achieving our overall objectives. So, to monitor and to check if we are achieving our overall objectives, we applying those indicator set such like KPIs, KRIs, and the next one, which is the KCI, key control indicators. But let us explain that on the right time when we are explaining the KCI. KRIs should inform discussions around the risk map and the setting of impact and likelihood levels of these risks. How to establish the key risk indicators? First of all, we need to understand how to establish a proper KRIs. First of all, we have to define our business objectives, and after that, we have to define the sources of the risks. After that, we establishing our KRIs, our key risk indicators, then the set key of threshold, then monitoring frequency. We're gonna talk about this separately in our examples that we're gonna see it after the sessions of the identify the risk indicators, the indicator set that we have. Okay, the types of key risk indicators, we have four famous types of key risk indicators. Starts with financial key risk indicators. This type of metrics help quantify market risk, regularity changes, or competitive risk. Banking KRIs are common here. This banking KRIs is an example of a financial KRIs. They include budget changes, acquisitions, or changes in strategic goals. Type number two, this is the most important one that I need you to focus on it, which is the operation. They look at risks that will arise on a day-to-day basis because of a security breach or a malfunction. The operational KRIs could range from poor internal controls to process inefficiencies, leadership changes, and internal failures. So, any malfunctions or failure within the operation or within the process, this is we can put it in our key risk indicators type, operational type. Number three is people. People KRIs. These KRIs measure employee retention rates, customer churn, labor storages, customer satisfaction, etc. They are most commonly used by HR departments or companies that deal with recruitment or staffing. So the recruitment department or HR department, they are using type 3 of key risk indicator, which is people key risk indicators. Number four is technological. Most industries have tech related KRIs. They measure data breaches, system failures, or regularity changes. We're gonna have an example of each and every one of these financial when we are on the applied session that we are example session, the session after this one. Okay, how to develop a KRI or a proper KRI? First of all, you need to revisit existing metrics. The metrics that you monitor should be regularly reviewed. You have your existing metrics that you are already prepared. You have to regularly review your these metrics. Conduct a SWOT analysis. We're also going to talk separately about this SWOT analysis and how to identify the SWOT analysis and how to prepare a proper SWOT analysis for your organization to identify, analyze, and document its risk appetite. The metrics should be changed periodically based on the industry. So that means revisiting your existing metrics have to this is assuring that you are changing your metrics periodically based on your industry system. Conduct Number two, conduct a full risk assessment. Revisit each metric and conduct a full risk assessment to measure your risk appetite. So, it's important to have a risk assessment, and this risk assessment you update it regularly. It's carried out to determine how the potential risk affect your goals. So in periodically monitor or periodically change or periodically updated your risk assessment, you are monitoring and checking if you are if this risk affecting your goals or not. Use this opportunity to learn about the possibility of the risk becoming an event where it might have the most impact. If the risk change to an event, that means that the most impact of this risk. Track changes in the control environment, the internal control integrated framework. Uh, Ensure the standards, processes, and the structure in organization are properly in place. So that means to assure that you are tracking the changes in control environment. That means your specifications, your structure, your processes, your standards all are in place, and to safeguard your organization, to assure that your organization will not face any type of unwanted risks. If there are changes to the processes and control, it can negatively affect the effectiveness of the control environment and risk exposure. So we are doing our best to avoid risk exposure to our organization. Isolate the risk, the root causes. We are isolating the root causes of a risk. That when we are identify the risk, we have to prioritize our risk, and each of them will require a unique response based on its priority. So here we isolating each and every risk root causes, and we identify it clearly to avoid any problems or to avoid any risks that may our organization or our project faces in the future. Conduct a root cause analysis to determine the importance of the risk and determine the action that needs to be taken. We make a root cause analysis to determine the importance of each and every risk that we have, and to determine also how the action needed, what's the action needed to be taken for this such type of the risk. Periodically collect data on KRIs. The data on the KRIs should be collected regularly. The KRI you choose should be measurable, predictable, comparable, and informational. So each and every KRIs has to be measurable. You can measure it, you can predict it, you can compare it, and also it's informational. Each and every one within our organization or even a third party, if you look to our risk management, for example, our data or our KRIs, he can understand what's the problem and how to we are dealing, what's the risk itself and how we can deal with this risk, and how we are measure our risk, and how we are predicted our risk, and how to compare our risk to our lesson learned that we have regarding to our risk management plan, which we're going to talk about it on this session itself. Determine the responsibilities. This is the most important point when we are developing the KRIs. We have to determine the responsibilities, who's responsible for each and every risks that we have, and who's tracking this risk, and how we can update the controls, developing the risk responses, and also re-evaluating the KRIs. Here we need to compare the KRIs versus the KPIs. We have a KPIs as we see in our previous session, KPIs, and now we have key risk indicators, which is the KRIs. What's the difference between these? As we said, the KPIs, we use it to measure our performance. This is the most important definition that we have to understand. And the KRIs, we use it to measure the level of our risks. And both of them has to be quantifiable, comparable, and enhance company capabilities. When we are doing this type of KPIs, we are enhancing our company's capabilities. Challenges of developing KRIs. We need to know these challenges when we are developing our KRIs. First one is getting accurate information about the organization can be difficult. When we are collecting the information about our organization, this information could not be accurate. In this case, when isn't available, finding mission critical activities can become a cumbersome process. It's become very difficult to us to develop an accurate KRIs. Number two, organization might find it challenging to identify the risk threats and vulnerabilities and quantify them by severity and impact. How the organization our organization identifying the risks, the threats, and how it severe to our organization and how it may impact our organization. This is also how we can measure this. This is may be a challenge to develop a proper care. Number three, getting leadership buy-in for the use of KRIs as an enterprise risk management program is a challenge. To let the leadership to be commit to the KRIs and also to the risk management program that we have, our enterprise risk management program, and to let them be understand the KRIs that we have and how we are updating these KRIs. This is sometimes become a headache to our organization and also become a challenging when we are developing KRIs. Also, number four, creating metrics that are measurable and understandable by the leadership. Sometimes you are creating some metrics, but suddenly we find that the leadership, our leadership, they are not aware of what we are doing. They are not aware of the impact and severity of these risks we found and the metrics that we use it to measure these risks. So we have to bear in mind we have to create the metrics that are measurable and understandable by the leadership of the organization. Number five, we have building activities to analyze changes in the KRI metrics. How we can build an activities to analyze the changes in the KRI metrics. We have a metrics, we have a type of the KRI metrics. Let us say we have a risk registry. How we can build specific activities to analyze the changes and how we can manage these changes within the metrics that we have. This has also become a challenge to our KRIs when we are developing. Additional resources required to develop the KRI framework. When we are developing our KRI framework, sometimes we didn't know either we have additional resources or we are required additional resources to our KRI framework or not. So this is also a challenge to our when we are developing our KRI. Creating a holistic KRI framework without excluding the risks. Sometimes you are creating a KRI framework for yourself, then for your organization, then you are excluding some risks. You let some risks out of your this KRI. So this is also a challenging for your KRI when you are developing a KRI. So you have to be accurate. You have to assure that you are including all the required, all the predicted risk within your KRIs. Poorly tracking KRIs due to inefficiencies caused by lack of proper resources. Proper resources is the most important item that we have to put in mind when we are developing our KRIs. We're going to see an examples for all of them. What is the risk management? As I mentioned before when we start our session, the risk management is the most important tool that we have to understand and to prepare it well and to let the leadership understand it, and how each and every one with our organization have to understand it well. The definition of the risk management is the process of identifying, assessing, and controlling threats to an organization, capital, and earnings. These risks stem from a variety of sources, including financial uncertainties, legal liabilities, technology issues, strategic management errors, accidental and natural disasters, and also unwanted factors that may occur. For example, a war between Russia and Ukraine also may be a risk. We have to identify this risk, and we have to predict what's going to happen there, and we have to understand how we can measure this and how to put it in our risk management as well. So it's not only limited to these points that mentioned here in this definition, no, but also may some things that occur, new something occur, that you have to put it in your mind when you are creating your risk management or risk management plan. Risk management processes. The risk management processes, please guys, you need to focus on these 5 points clearly. These 5 points actually identify and clarify the life cycle of the risks itself, the KRIs itself. First of all, we need to understand how we can identify the risk. We have risks. We need to identify these risks. We need to know how we can identify these risks properly. Number two, how we can measure these risks, how we can analyze this risk. We need to know. We already identified the risks. We collect these risks. We need to measure these risks. We need to understand the tools that we can use to measure these risks. When we are measuring the risks, number three here, we have to examine the solutions that we have to solve these risks that we are identified in the first place, which is we need to prioritize our risks. Number four, treat the risks, how we can implement the solution. We examine the solution in number three. We need to implement our solutions and how we gonna treat our risk and how we gonna solve our risks properly. Number five is monitor the risks. How we monitor the risk? We monitor our risks through these 4 steps here. Number five, we monitor our risks and our results clearly and properly if we prepare these 4 stages properly in the first place. We're gonna explain this in our coming examples and how we gonna prepare a proper KRIs within the next sessions. Risk register. I mentioned a risk register. What's the risk register? When I heard someone say that, or someone talking about risk register, a risk register is a tool in risk management and project management. It's used to identify potential risk in a project or an organization, sometimes to fulfill regularity compliance, but mostly to stay on the top of potential issues that can derail intended outcomes. So the risk registry, the tool that we are using it on our risk management or on our project management to identify the potential of this of the risks in the project or our organization. While the risk register is mostly used during the execution of the project, it's a part of your risk management plan. So when you are preparing your risk management plan, which is must be given serious consideration by project manager during the project planning phase, there is no time too early to start thinking about risk analysis on your project. So the risk register is so important tool that we are using it within our during our project, within our organization, to monitor, to measure, and to identify the risk or to predict the risks that we may face in the future. So, as the definition here, there is no time too early to start thinking about risk analysis in your project. Therefore, having a project risk register on hand and ready is essential in managing risk. So, the essential thing in managing your risk to have a risk register well prepared in your hand, and when you need it, you're gonna find it. This is the risk register. Components of the risk register. We have a components for our risk register, we need to identify this component. This is not limited to only this. You can add more and more to your risk register, but this is the important components to the risk register. Number one is the risk identification ID, a name or ID number to identify the specific risk. Risk description, a brief explanation of the specific risk. Risk breakdown structure or RBS. A risk breakdown structure or RBS is a chart that allows you to identify all your project risk and categorize them. Risk categories. There are many risk categories that can impact projects such as schedule, budget, technical, external, third party, more and more risk categories that we have. So we have to identify our risk categories in our risk register. Risk analysis. The purpose of risk analysis to determine the probability and impact of the risk. So in our risk register, we have to mention the risk analysis that we're gonna use to determine the probability and impact of the specific risk. You can either do a qualitative risk analysis or quantitative risk analysis. Risk probability. You will need to estimate the likelihood of each risk and assign a qualitative or quantitative value of this risk. Risk priority. The risk priority is determined by assigning a risk score to each risk. You have to determine and assigning risk score for each risk, which is obtained by multiplying the risk impact and probabilities values. If you are using qualitative measurements, you will need to prioritize the risk with the highest impact and highest probability. Risk response. Each risk needs a risk response to mitigate its effect on your project. Those risk responses are also documented in a risk response plan. Risk ownership. Each risk needs to be assigned to a team member who become a risk owner. This risk owner is responsible to deploying an appropriate response to supervising this risk. So we're gonna explain all these points, all these components, or in our coming session when we are applying examples to these KRIs and risk register as well. This is an example of a risk register that we can use it, and this is only an example. We're gonna go through the examples on coming next sessions, how to create a proper risk register and what's the component of this risk register, how to detail each and every component of this risk register. Risk analysis. Risk analysis is a process that figures out how likely risk will arise in the project. So risk analysis, a process that we use it to figure out how likely risk will arise in our project. It studies the uncertainty of potential risk and how they would impact the project in terms of schedule, quality, and cost if in fact they were to show up. Two ways to analyze risks are quantitative and qualitative, but it's important to know that risk analysis is not an exact science, so it's important to track risk throughout the project lifecycle. Type of risk analysis, as we said before, we have qualitative risk analysis. The qualitative risk analysis is a risk assessment done by experts on the project team who use data from past projects and their expertise to estimate the impact and probability value of each risk on a scale or a risk matrix. When we defined here the qualitative risk analysis, we said use data from past project. From where we gonna get this past projects data? For example, from lesson learned, from our previously risk register, from our previously risk analysis methods that we use. All this data we can collect the required data on the qualitative risk analysis type from this data. From, as I said, from this type of data we have in our project and related to the past project that within our organization. Quantitative risk analysis. The quantitative risk analysis is a statistical analysis of the effect of this identified risk on the overall project. This helps project manager and team leaders to make decisions with reduced uncertainty and support the process of controlling risks. We're gonna define each and every one of these risk analysis types and we're going to give example for it on the next sessions. Risk analysis methods, we have four major of risk analysis methods. We have bow tie analysis. The qualitative risk analysis method is used to identify causes and consequences for all potential project risk. We have risk analysis matrix. The risk analysis matrix assesses the likelihood and the severity of the risks, classifying them by order of importance. We have risk register. We already talks about risk register. And the last one, we have SWIFT analysis. Also, we're going to give example for the SWIFT analysis in the next sessions. SWIFT stands for the structural what-if techniques. Stands for structural what-if techniques. Structured what-if techniques. It's a risk analysis method that focuses on identifying potential risk associated with changes made to a project plan. So, when a change is made to our project plan, the associated risk to these changes, we can analyze it by SWIFT analysis. As its name suggests, team members have to come up with any what if. So we're using here, as we said in KPIs before, we're using 5 whys. Here we use this, a part of this 5 why, what if questions. They can find out all the potential risks that could raise. This is the end of our topic number 2, which is the indicator set type 2, which is the KRIs. Now we finalize topic number 1, which is KPI, and topic number 2 as well, which is the KRIs. And the next session is going to be KCI, which is the key control indicators. After we finalize all these types of indicators, we're going to give example for each and every one of them and how we prepare all the required documentation for this type of indicator set. Thank you guys and have a nice day.